Chapter 4. Milo followed Ava's napkin, to a spot in the middle of the vast studio parking lot. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and blinked again. This couldn't be right. He checked the napkin again, turned it upside down, then right side up, as if changing its orientation might somehow transform the disappointing reality. The structure before him could generously be described as a shed, although the words oversized doghouse came to mind. Or oversized doghouse that looked like it had been designed by an architect who'd failed both geometry and common sense. If Milo even wanted to step inside, he was going to have to duck his head. The structure had surely been in parking lot J17 since the dawn of cinema itself, either stubbornly refusing to be noticed or removed. "How is this an archive?" Milo asked. "My office is bigger than this thing." "And Ava spent her lunch hours here?" He circled the structure, half expecting to find a "just kidding" sign slapped to the back. Finding none, he returned to the door. Maybe it was an Ava prank, although he hadn't really thought her the type. He glanced down at the key. It was absurdly large for such a diminutive building, almost like using a broadsword to open a matchbook. "Well, here goes nothing." Milo inserted the key into the lock and turned. He heard a resounding click, and a moment later the door swung open with a creak that would have been right at home in an audition for Mike Flanagan. He peered inside, expecting to see cobwebs, forgotten props, or possibly the skeleton of a long-lost grip. Instead, Milo found himself staring down a long set of narrow stairs that went underground, into the very bowels of Hollywood itself. Huh. A cool breeze tickled his cheeks. He supposed that Alice had her rabbit hole, and he had this. Whatever this was. Did Milo even want to go into the bowels of Hollywood? Who knows what he'd find there? Grease paint, tarnished reputations, the sequel to Forrest Gump? Regardless, Milo steeled himself and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. It locked immediately afterwards, plunging him into darkness. "Don't suppose I could get some light?" Milo asked. A second later, the lights went on. Milo wasn't sure whether to be nervous. Maybe the lights were just automated. He started down. The wooden stairs creaked, an ominous warning suggesting this journey wasn't meant for the faint of heart or anyone lacking in decent health insurance. The air cooled, and the stairs seemed to twist in on themselves. Just when Milo was starting to wonder if he'd somehow stumbled into an M.C. Escher sketch, the passage opened into a long hallway. He was reticent to leave the stairs. What if he got trapped down here? Hardly possible when he had the key. And then again, Ava knew where he was. Hopefully if he went missing, she'd come looking for him. He walked along the hallway and entered into a cavernous room. His jaw dropped. Milo had arrived at nothing short of cinematic paradise. The walls were plastered with movie posters, some familiar and others so obscure they might as well have been from a corner of the multiverse where Citizen Kane had been released as a slapstick comedy. There were rows upon rows of shelves as far as the eye could see, each one laden with film canisters, memorabilia and scripts, Tarantino's Star Trek. He reached for it, then remembered his mission. He was here for inspiration, and he was fairly sure the studio wouldn't let him direct that. Or Tarantino. "Hello?" Milo's voice echoed in the dust. "Anyone home?" No response. Surely there had to be an attendant. A guide. A wise old man who spoke in riddles and movie quotes. He spotted a high counter with a little silver bell sitting out. A small desk sign proclaimed Felix. Milo walked over and raised a finger to ding the bell. A red blur shot up from behind the counter, startling Milo. It was a red, fuzzy fox puppet with googly eyes. It held a bottle of Artemis Tull whiskey in one of its hands. Or was that paws? The puppet looked like something Henson might have created during a particularly bitter divorce from Sesame Street. "Don't fucking touch that, kid," said the fox, raising his free hand. "This ain't some Mickey Mouse operation, though he did try to buy us out in '86. Milo stared at the fox. The fox stared back. "You got a request, or can I go back to hitting the sauce?" Milo blinked rapidly, wondering if perhaps the coffee Ava had given him was laced with something stronger than espresso. I'm looking for Felix, I guess." "You got him?" the fox said. The counter was too high for Milo to see over, so he got on his tiptoes. The fox slapped him. "Keep your peepers on your side of the counter. I don't go looking under your trousers." Milo recoiled. "I prefer to speak with whoever is operating the puppet, if that's all right." Felix's felt brows furrowed, an impressive feat of puppetry that Milo might have appreciated under very different circumstances. "I beg your pardon," Felix said, his tone sharp enough to edit Terence Malick. "I am not being operated. I am Felix, guardian of the archive and cinematic connoisseur extraordinaire. I've been here longer than the term blockbuster has been in existence." "Right, of course," Milo said, trying and failing to keep the sarcasm out of his voice. "And I'm Orson Welles, here to reshoot the ending of The Magnificent Ambersons." Felix defied both physics and Milo's understanding of puppet reality by narrowing his eyes. "I'll have you know, Mr. Not Wells, that the ending of that film is amongst the greats." Now it was Milo's turn to narrow his eyes. "And I take my job very seriously," Felix said. "Now, unless you would like for me to call security, and believe me, our security golems make the studio lawyers look like cuddly, snuggly bunnies, state your business." Milo raised his hands in surrender. After all, antagonizing a puppet in a secret underground film archive felt like a surefire way to end up as the subject of a found-footage horror film. And besides, he was willing to play along with whoever was operating the damn thing. They obviously didn't get a lot of company down here. "My apologies, Felix. I'm here to use the archive. Ava, the barista, gave me her key." The puppet's demeanor changed in a blink. "Ava? Why didn't you say? She's one of our most valued patrons. Always returns the films on time and never recreates the North by Northwest chase scene in the aisles." Milo leaned closer. "Does that happen a lot?" Felix sighed. "More than you would imagine. Now." He gestured toward a massive ledger with his fuzzy paw. "Sign in here, please. And don't forget to log out when you're done. We've had issues with people getting lost in here for decades. Found a guy last week who thought E.T. was still phoning home." Milo eyed the fox. "That can't be true, can it?" Felix tapped the ledger. "Sign." So Milo did, scrawling his name in the ledger. "Now then," Felix said, "the archive is organized chronologically, alphabetically, and according to a complex system of ley lines and zodiac signs that only I understand. What sort of film did you want to watch?" "I'm not entirely sure," Milo said. "Something inspirational?" "Ah, A Seeker of Muses." Felix's tail swished, then pointed. "That aisle. Feel free to peruse. When you find something that catches your eye, take it to one of our viewing rooms, down that hallway, past the Smell-O-Vision exhibit, just before the films that almost started World War III section." "I beg your pardon?" Milo asked. But Felix had already disappeared back behind the counter. And much as Milo was tempted to look, he really wanted to know who was operating the puppet. He didn't want to get turfed by security. So Milo set off in the direction Felix had pointed. En route, his fingers trailed reverently over canisters, some so old they predated the concept of continuity editing. He found a dusty print of London After Midnight, long thought lost to time. An alternate cut of Blade Runner with a happy ending and a musical number featuring replicants and a chorus line of origami unicorns. And was that a copy of Springtime for Hitler? Milo walked on, finally stopping at a pedestal that looked lifted from one of the good Indiana Jones movies. An enormous tome sat atop the plinth, its leather cover embossed in gold leaf with the words, "The Complete Cinematic Codex." He approached it, half expecting Felix to pop up and smack him again. But he didn't. He started flipping through the pages, each one listing hundreds of films organised by director. It was a veritable who's who of cinema, from the world's most well-known auteurs to directors so underground they considered sunlight a special effect. Scrolling through the C-section, a title caught his eye. The Golden Path by Frank Capra. He froze, his finger hovering over the entry. Despite priding himself on his Capra knowledge, Milo had never heard of this film. His thesis on It's a Wonderful Life was referred to as alarmingly thorough by one professor and possibly grounds for a psych evaluation by another. Milo walked back to the desk. "Hey, Felix." His voice was tinged with excitement. "What can you tell me about The Golden Path by Capra?" The puppet popped up, and for some reason it looked irritated by the intrusion. How was that even possible? Perhaps due to the contents of the whiskey bottle being now substantially lower. And turned toward Milo with an audible squeak. "Ah, The Golden Path? Some say it was Capra's magnum opus. Others claim it was the movie that not only nearly ended his career, but also the world. If you believe the wildest rumours." "Ended the world?" Milo raised a brow. "Did he film it on uranium?" Felix gave a bark of laughter that sounded like Velcro being slowly pulled apart. "Nothing so dramatic. Let's just say it's a film that asks some uncomfortable questions. The type of cinematic exploration that turns green-lit projects into career-ending black holes." "Now that," Milo said with a widening grin, "sounds like exactly the movie I need to see." Felix sighed. "That's what they all say." "Who is they?" Milo asked. "Anyone who shows up looking for inspiration?" And for some reason, Felix's words gave Milo a chill.